Did you know that Venezuela is one of the world's richest oil countries? Yet why are its people hungry? The enmity between America and Venezuela is not just politics but a game of oil and power. In today's video, we will reveal every detail. Venezuela is located in the northern part of South America, bordered by the Caribbean Sea to the north, Guyana to the east, Brazil to the south, and Colombia to the west. This country is famous not only for its own beauty, but also for its lush forests, towering mountains, and beautiful beaches, which make it stand out on the world map. But beneath this beauty lies a great wealth, and that is oil. America has attacked Venezuela out of greed for this oil, but the question arises, just how much oil is there? According to the latest estimates, Venezuela has reserves of 300 billion barrels of crude oil, which is the largest in the world. This amount is so much that it is more than Saudi Arabia. Now just imagine if all of Venezuela's oil were extracted today and sold worldwide at current global prices, its estimated value would be approximately $17 trillion. This oil accumulated beneath the earth over millions of years due to gradual transformations. This country is famous worldwide for its oil, and that's why international powers have always been interested in Venezuela, and this wealth of oil once made it a global economic power. In the 1970s, Venezuela was a prosperous and wealthy country. Oil exports supported its economy. Progress was made in the big cities. Roads, schools, and hospitals were built, and people's lives became easier and happier. The people here were living one of the best lives in the world, and Venezuela was associated with wealth, luxury, comfort, and prosperity. The president and government of that time took advantage of the wealthy oil opportunities to make the country a rich and powerful nation on the world map. But the situation changed. Political conflicts, mismanagement, and the effects of the global market pushed Venezuela into economic crisis. People are struggling for basic daily necessities. Inflation and unemployment have scorched the country, and despite the oil wealth, the lives of ordinary citizens are not as prosperous as before. This crisis and the difficulties of the people were the environment in which a new leader emerged, and his name was Hugo Chavez. The person who understood the country's poverty, the people's difficulties, and was ready to bring change. Hugo Chavez was a soldier before becoming the president of Venezuela, but not an ordinary soldier, rather a person who was deeply affected by the country's poverty and the people's difficulties. In the 1980s and 1990s, poverty, unemployment, and inequality were common in Venezuela, and people were unable to raise their voices for their rights. So Hugo Chavez took advantage of that time and built his popularity among the people. But being popular was not enough. Hugo Chavez saw that a major reason for the country's poverty and difficulties was the influence and interference of America and international powers. This was the moment when he started speaking against America and promised that Venezuela's wealth would be used for all the people of the country, not just the rich. Despite the wealth, America's influence kept the people of Venezuela in poverty, and Hugo Chavez promised to counter this. He said that Venezuela should be independent and that this oil wealth should not be just for the rich but for the entire population of the country. But the question was, how would all this be possible? Merely opposing America was not enough. Hugo Chavez had a complete vision and means for a system that would not limit wealth to a few hands but reach the people, and this vision is known to the world as socialism. Socialism means the fair distribution of wealth and resources so that not only the rich class but also the poor and middle class can lead a prosperous life. Hugo Chavez's politics made Venezuela prominent on the global stage. He fought for the people, raised a voice against the influence and dominance of America, and tried to bring change in the country through socialism. But as time passed, political and economic crises also grew. And even today, the people of Venezuela are going through its backward story. After Hugo Chavez, the borders of Venezuela came into the hands of a person who had been working under his shadow for years, and this person was Nicolas Maduro. In his last speech, Nicolas Maduro declared Hugo Chavez as his successor, and with this support, Nicolas Maduro became president for the first time in 2013. But as soon as the power changed, Venezuela's story also began to change, and the issues that were suppressed during Hugo Chavez's era started to come to the forefront. When Nicolas Maduro succeeded in the 2013 elections and took on the role of president, but gaining power is one thing and maintaining it is entirely another. After Hugo Chavez, Venezuela was going through a delicate phase, and as time passed, questions began to arise about Nicolas Maduro's leadership. These questions soon reached the elections. Nicolas Maduro was later re-elected as president and also claimed to become president for the third time in 2025. But this time, the claim became a topic of debate not only within Venezuela but around the world, as many countries refused to recognize these elections. The world questioned whether this was truly the people's decision or just another attempt to maintain power. This was the point where serious objections about the transparency of the election emerged. Several international observers and human rights organizations stated that Venezuela's elections were not transparent. The opposition alleged that there was rigging. Independent observers were not given complete freedom, and the real results were hidden from the public. When the accusations increased, the matter was no longer limited to Venezuela. Now major world powers also came into play in this matter. The United States and several European countries refused to recognize Nicolas Maduro's presidency as legitimate. They stated that the fundamental democratic principles were not met in the elections. This was a clear message that the world is not believing Nicolas Maduro's claims, and when global powers are displeased, the consequences are not limited to statements. Its impact affects the entire country. This is why international pressure on Venezuela increased and several strict economic sanctions were imposed, and these sanctions were to put pressure on the government. But the greatest impact was on the general public, and this was the point where politics, restrictions, and poor governance directly collided with people's lives. The biggest reason for the public's discontent is the severe economic crisis. During Nicolas Maduro's era, inflation skyrocketed. Food, medicines, and basic necessities became scarce, and millions of people were forced to leave the country. Along with this, the government harshly suppressed dissent and took action against the opposition, which further fueled the public's anger. Today, many people in Venezuela want change, some for democratic reforms and some just for a better and more prosperous life. But the story of Venezuela's crisis is not limited to internal politics. When a country becomes weak, global powers also start to move around it, and this is the point where America enters this story. America imposed sanctions on Venezuela on various grounds. The United States says that the elections in Venezuela were not fair, and the rulers ignored the people's attitude. According to the US State Department, these sanctions were part of a comprehensive economic and financial pressure aimed at bringing the Venezuelan government towards political reforms. But this pressure was not limited to statements alone. This directly targeted the centers of government institutions and the economy. America blacklisted several Venezuelan government officials, state oil companies, and even ships. After these actions, these institutions and entities were deprived of access to the American financial and commercial system. But America's opposition was not limited to just sanctions. The real conflict was over the legal status of power. After 2019, the American government did not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Washington's stance was that Nicolas Maduro's government did not maintain transparency in the democratic process and remained in power through undemocratic means. For this reason, the United States recognized the President of the Parliament, Juan Guaido, as the interim president when he declared himself president under the Constitution in 2019, even if later there were changes in Venezuela's internal politics and legal situation. But for many years, the American policy was not to recognize the Nicolas Maduro government. However, Venezuela's importance was not just due to politics, but the real power was hidden underground, and this oil has been the backbone of the country's economy. For many decades, American companies were involved in the production and export of oil in Venezuela and extracted oil from Venezuela to send to the United States through specific institutions. It should be clear that the oil was never America's property. Rather, it was a commercial transaction, profit in exchange for energy. But when the sanctions became strict, the oil export was restricted. This caused Venezuela to face severe difficulties in using its biggest economic resource, oil, and these politics, sanctions and oil together became a storm whose biggest impact was borne by the common people of Venezuela. Now, let's come to the main topic. In January 2026, the United States arrested Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in Caracas during a special operation and transferred them to New York. In this operation, the United States used more than 150 military aircraft, including bombers, fighter jets, and spy planes. These aircraft attacked all the military bases in Venezuela and rendered them ineffective, after which Delta SEALs reached Nicolas Maduro's hideout. Upon arrival, they came under fire, which damaged a helicopter, but it narrowly escaped complete destruction. This mission was so sensitive that it was kept secret even from the American Congress, and Nicolas Maduro was presented in court, where he was charged with drug trafficking, smuggling, and other serious crimes. The United States declared this operation as an enforcement action aimed at combating drugs and international crimes. The American official has said that the charges were already in place and have been enforced. Nicolas Maduro, rejecting all the allegations against him in court, has said that he is innocent and considers himself the constitutional president of Venezuela. American officials have accused Nicolas Maduro and his associates of being involved in a conspiracy to import drugs and the illegal use of weapons. They are also accused of having connections with drug cartels and other criminal organizations. The court has kept them in custody with strict security, and they are going through the stages of plea bargaining or proving innocence. China has termed the American trial against Nicolas Maduro as an entanglement against Venezuela's national sovereignty. They state that bringing the president of another country to their court is against international norms. Russia and some other countries have also made statements in favor of Nicolas Maduro's legal rule and have said that every country should respect its sovereignty. Venezuela was also the richest country in Latin America. Oil, wealth, and power were all present, but this enmity between America and Venezuela, internal corruption, and wrong policies turned a rich country into one of murderers, hunger, and migration. The question is not who is to blame. The real question is why the common people are paying the price. This was the story of the complex relations between Venezuela and America. Now you tell us who is at fault between the two. Be sure to express your opinion in the comment section.